give you the police discount.
Fly lice?
Fly lice. It is fry rice, you prick.
John, the gang's all here. That's the tagline for Lethal Weapon 4. And you can tell by this point, if you remember the poster for part 1, part 2, it was just Riggs and Murtaugh with their guns. Part 3 had this ridiculous Leo popping over their shoulders. And part 4 has like the entire fucking cast on the poster. So you're like, okay, well, I guess this is no longer a buddy cop. It's a buddy movie. The landscape of film had changed by 1998. This movie came out July 10th, 1998, up against Armageddon. Ridiculous budget, especially for the late 90s. By far the biggest budget of a Lethal Weapon movie at $140 million. Obviously, 6 years had passed since the third one, which was more time than all three of the originals came out, back to back. It made $130 million domestically, $285 worldwide. Definitely the least profitable of all of them. Not a bomb, but summer movies had ramped up so much at that point, so much different than, dropping a buddy cop comedy in the late 80s or early 90s. Right after Lethal Weapon 3 and the success of it, I think Joel Silver initially was like, okay, we tied it up. This is a trilogy. It's done. But then, as we talked about in 3, he tried buying a spec script for Simon Says in hopes of kind of taking it and rewriting it into a Lethal Weapon script. I'm guessing it would have had to been taken place in LA, just with a very similar thing of, a vengeance, somebody from Riggs and Murtaugh's past. Yeah,
Gary Busey's son would be playing the villain.
Oh, hey, Jake Busey.
Jake Busey.
Yeah. But the funny thing is then 20th Century Fox bought Simon Says to be Rapid Fire 2, which was like a Brandon Lee movie that not a lot of people saw. So I don't know how that would have worked as far as like your budget goes or whatever. Donner was still planning on more Lethal Weapon movies. He wanted to make a 4 and 5. However, Mel Gibson did not want to make a fourth movie. He thought that it was perfect the way it was. And, some people could argue maybe they should have left it alone.
Pressure from the studio. No, I like working with Donner. This is the 6th time I've worked with Donner, and
having done this rewatch, I have a much bigger fondness of 4 than I had initially. I think the action got a lot ramped up from 3. It had some higher stakes, some better villains. I'm only speaking in my opinion, but there was a lot of problems with this movie. Shane Black did come back, at least for some of the writing, along with I think his name is like Jonathan Lemkin. And Alfred Go. But the big problem with this movie, John, is that it had 4 editors.
Yes.
That's never a good thing. Now we can start to see like why this movie cost so much, why the production was so tough. There was a lot of problems with this movie where I think the first 3 kind of went fairly smoothly. Basic plot of the basic plot is convenience, but we'll talk about the actual. Yeah. So Riggs and Murtaugh like square off against an Asian mobster called Wasinku, who is up to his neck in the slave trading and counterfeit currency. And I do feel that the plot of this one actually stays very consistent with itself. Yes, it does go off into territories where you're like, oh shit, did I forget what's going on in this movie? A couple of times it does, because it wants to really catch you up with the characters after a 6-year-long hiatus. But I feel like the plot in this one is more important than it was in 3, as far as the villains and things like that. But Jet Li joins the cast, and I have to say, it's a great matchup, because to this point, Riggs has been the badass like fighter, and you have Murtaugh with his good marksman skills. Well, they both have good marksman skills, but it's scary how much like faster Woo Sing Kyu is than Riggs and Murtaugh at the same time. So you learn pretty quickly that, like, even though like Riggs kind of sizes him up in one point when they first meet, this guy could fucking kill both of them in 2 seconds in hand to hand. And it's kind of great because it's a nice change of pace. It's like physically they're so far outmatched. He doesn't get a lot of dialogue or screen time to really go over his plot. It's usually all visually shown, like him sort of meeting the forefathers. And
he's menacing when he needs to be there. His look is great. As you pointed out, his skills really stand out. He is a great villain in that respect, but he's lacking just because he doesn't have a lot of dialogue to fill out his character.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The only pushback I'll have in that is he's menacing because of that, because of his stares and because of how mysterious he is and stoic he is. To me, that's different than villains we've seen in the past that Riggs thinks he's going to end up going up against. So Riggs has a harder time kind of figuring this guy out. And it's kind of the only movie that has that villain who's just, he doesn't have a lot of exchanges, almost none, with our two leads. When he does, there's some really, I think this movie stands out in the quadrilogy because of the stunts. Obviously the fighting, because that makes sense. I think they were really leaning into that being a thing, and this is pre-Matrix. This is a year before Matrix. So you have all this kind of cool kung fu martial arts stuff that he's doing, and even Riggs doesn't know how to counter it. As goofy as this movie gets, and we'll get into it, I feel like whenever Riggs and Murtaugh are in a scene with Hua Sing Hu, you're worried. You're like kind of worried about them because he could fuck them up real fast, Chris Rock joins the cast. I guess he's supposed to be comic relief and sort of a foil to Leo. I'll say this right off the bat. I love Chris Rock's stand-up. I think he's one of the best to ever do it.
I know you can't tell on camera. Will Smith is significantly bigger than me. We're not the same size, okay?
But man, I've just never bought him in film. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that.
A lot of it's how he's written. He's a fool. He's a clown. And we're supposed to believe him in these like action scenes when he's just been a goofball, and he's literally just doing Chris Rock shtick, like, how do you use that old dial phone? Did for? And it's like, and then later on, he's like, pulling his gun out, and we're supposed to be scared. It just doesn't work for me at all when it comes to the Chris Rock character, specifically the twist of him somehow impregnating and marrying Rianne, the daughter of Murtaugh, without him knowing any of that. How he's a detective. How would that happen? I don't know. But everybody else in the family knows, and he didn't pick up on any banter or anything going on at the dinner table. I don't know. But
well, all of the baby stuff is some of the worst for me. Like
it is,
right
and they sideline our girl in this movie, man.
Yeah,
They
seriously.
sideline her with this fake belly, and it's like, why'd you cut
her up? Yeah, that was a bad move.
Why'd you write her out of the movie? Yeah.
They could have written Leo and Chris Rock out and written all the babies out and just kept her, being part of the action. I would be much happier with that. They actually do spend a considerable amount of time on the other subplot of the mysterious money that Murtaugh has, and his wife being an erotic novelist.
It adds nothing. It does nothing to the story whatsoever.
Like, I would really like to say I like some of the action scenes, but like
I love some of the action in this movie.
But at least two of them are kind of ruined by the banter and the dialogue that takes place during them. One of them being the opening scene, which has all the baby talk, and the stupid like, take your clothes off and flap your arms around or whatever.
Oh,
like,
the opening.
Murtaugh is not the same. Like he's
a clown in this movie.
He's too over the top in his buffoonery this time.
I cannot sanction your buffoonery.
Where it worked before, like in the opening of the third film, where he's like, you just said blue a second ago. The way he delivers his dialogue is, really funny, but still coming across as over the top from the way it was in 1 and 2, but it still worked. By 3, it's just caricature. They're all caricatures of themselves. But it really bugs me that Murtaugh goes so over the top, because he was the one that, especially with these new rewatches, he's becoming my favorite character of the series. But 4, they let him down with some of the things they make him do, the homophobia and stuff. Not like, it doesn't rub me the wrong way that was an aspect of the movie at that time, but it's just like subplots. It's just stuff that doesn't add that much to the plot I'd like to be interested in, which is in a Lethal Weapon movie, the action plot. I know there's always the familial stuff going on, but I didn't like that one. That one did not work for me. The anything to do with Chris Rock and his daughter, and so I wish. Yeah. And what I was saying about like the opening action scene has all that damn dialogue trying to explain to us and get it out of the way so the movie can get going with that storyline.
Again, like a big
having kids,
a big overblown, overproduced practical stunt effect at the beginning with the guy with the flamethrower, all for nothing except to start the movie. Despite Butters is his name, which is ridiculous. Butters and Rianne being married with a baby on the way. In the movie, they never speak a word to each other out loud. And that's because originally Rianne's husband or whatever was supposed to be a secret till the end. Maybe it was supposed to be a cop or something, because Butters was written literally as a gay detective, like, or whatever you want to call it, anti-gay humor in this movie.
The other action scene that I wish, like, the dialogue that has to come up in these moments, it's like, come on, what the fuck? These guys are in the middle of action. Why are we talking about this? The finale has them talking about the reveal of the
you're boinking J.K. Rowling?
Yeah.
No,
fucking J.K. Rowling.
So you are boinking J.K. Rowling? Yeah, I guess I am boinking. Yeah. No, it's
you are boinking. Yeah, you are boinking.
It's terrible. Like,
it's terrible.
Well, here's the thing, and we'll get into it as we move on. But so we talked about the opening briefly. And we also talked about how 3 and 4 specifically, 2 a little bit, 2 they're on a case and it just turns out to be more than they bargained for. 3 is they're just walking and then they watch an armored car get robbed. In 4, they up the ante, where Leo, Riggs, and Murtaugh are on, I guess, an overnight fishing trip. And they stumble upon this huge human trafficking of Chinese people, and a big shootout happens. And that ignites the plot. They weren't on the case, nothing like that. And again, I'll say, like, I do like the little changes. Riggs can't fight the way he used to, and he certainly can't fight these martial artists. And I love the fact that they put the laser sighting on his scope to show that on his gun, to show that he either isn't or doesn't think he's as good of a marksman as he used to be. It's a nice little touch.
Yeah.
With that laser scope. But then you get more ridiculous Murtaugh, ham-fisted, I'm freeing slaves. I'm freeing slaves.
And I'm freeing slaves. I'm freeing slaves.
And he finds a family and takes them in, and that's all fine because it's a little bit different than stuff
they've always wanted to have their socially conscious message, even from the first film.
Sure.
I like the direction they go with this one. But there's a lot of ham-fisted stuff in there.
This is where you get into more Murtaugh property damage. A shark is eating his boat during this action scene, which deflates so much of the good, action scene of Riggs getting on the big boat and all that stuff. It's like, yes. What the fuck is going on?
Yep, they always have to have their humor go. It's like Leo deflates tension on anything he does after part 2. But yeah, that scene and the shark and everything. I mean, I kind of like that there's a shark in a Lethal Weapon movie.
I just wish it would have ate Leo. Yeah. No, Leo is much less insufferable in this one, in my opinion. He's a little bit toned down, and actually some of the scenes where they're just making fun of him is pretty hilarious because he wants to be a PI.
Yeah.
I mean, his whole character is just ridiculous, and obviously they're shoehorning him into every one of these movies, but this one, he doesn't bug me as much as he does in 3.
I can agree with that, but yeah. Everybody does to some degree. Like he was already a caricature even from part 2. He's kind of not a realistic person, but whatever. The whole cast has become caricatures at this point. So like no one's really the character I wish they were in this particular film.
I love the way this movie ends. Not the stupid portrait of everybody like we're a family. Like literally that was a behind the scenes shot and Donner just put it in.
No! Yeah. We're family!
And this is
time
the
around.
first movie ever, John, that you find out the actual name of the psychiatrist, the doctor.
Stephanie, I think.
Yeah, you don't know her name. Yeah, he goes, Stephanie, how many times do I have to tell you? Like, this is the only
But
time.
again, like that pushes it a little bit too far, and yeah, I don't know. It's
Stephanie, I can't go out with you. I'm in a relationship. I'm very happy. All right, I think
when they do the car chase on the freeway, whatever car they're in doesn't have a siren, and Riggs like, I'd kill for a siren right now, and Murtaugh's like, "Aah!" like out the window just for a second. But I don't know. I cracked up laughing at that moment because that felt like the way that they kind of been. It was a little over the top and buffoonish, but it still kind of felt like the way he would react to what Riggs is saying in the moment, the way they used to react to each other.
Dude, that freeway scene is legit. I mean, that is fucking spectacular.
That's a great lethal weapon action set piece.
It's super long. It's intense. Like, it moves locations. Like, oh my god, I love that scene. Even like Riggs when he's out on the table just holding on to the plastic, and then obviously that piece of wood wouldn't fly through a windshield, but it's a movie, you know.
Yeah, much like the way I think that Spielberg shot inflatable inner tube falling out of the back of an airplane and landing on a snowy hill. I buy it the way it's shot. I just accept it. It works for me. The physics, the way it's shown, work for me. This is another example of that, where it's like, no, a lot of that wouldn't take place, but they do it in a way where I'm so on board, I don't care. But they do it in a way that it seems very plausible, you know? Like,
yeah, because it's a great escalation of a scene, like him going in to fight these guys in this, you know, under construction like trailer, and then there's plastic and they're fighting in there, and he's getting shoved up against the plastic, and then the plastic's only held up by staples, so it comes out. It's very good, and it's well edited too, but really well shot. Yeah, I agree that it's the escalation of that scene, and it pushes it a little bit when they floor it through the building, which obviously Fast and Furious does in every fucking movie afterwards. But it's such a fun scene, and they let the tires blow out, so it's like, okay, it's kind of realistic, and then they get hit. Man, there's some great set pieces in this movie. So Lethal Weapon movies, it's like once you get to once you get to a part 4, I guess it makes sense to have it like international, Chinese warlords. Okay, let's do that, because we've already done drug dealers, gun runners, diplomats, whatever. But aside from the freeway chase, which is a huge positive for me, I think the ending is very special, and not what you and I were talking about, where they're like, hey, I had sex with fucking Jane Austen and fuck all that stuff. And when Riggs and Murtaugh go down to the bottom level of that dock, and it's just a super pissed off Jet Li because they had killed the forefathers, and they killed, I think, like his brother or something. And the way he looks at them. So Murtaugh, he knows his age and he knows his abilities. And he's just like, it ain't worth it, Riggs. Like, they already know they can't beat this guy. They've been thrown around by him the whole movie. Riggs is like, okay, fine, let's go. And then they turn around and walk away. And then Riggs goes, that thing with the gun, the way he took my gun apart like that, how did he do that? How did he do that? And that's Riggs telling Murtaugh that he wants to fight him, like we can't let this guy go. So Murtaugh goes, okay, let's go ask him.
I mean, he took my gun apart with one deft move. How did he do that? How? Okay, let's go ask him.
And then the fight that ensues, and it's the only fight where Murtaugh and Riggs are fighting the same guy. And I found that really interesting. And the fact that Murtaugh and Riggs just get so fucked up in this fight, and they really cut the music down to just this very ominous sort of just, it's not like action music, it's just like weird, it's just like dangerous quiet synth or something. Bad, they're just getting beat by this guy, and like even when he throws kicks, it takes two of them to like take him down. When Murtaugh finally gets taken out, you get that look in Riggs' eyes where he just starts headbutting him over and over, and that there's so much like heart and danger and creativity in that final fight. For me, it's the one part of the movie that doesn't have any funny, like, you don't even know. You're like, okay, this is part 4. Are one of these guys gonna die? You don't know. Even rewatching it a few nights ago and knowing the outcome for 25 years, I was like, fuck, this scene is so good. Like, this guy is so overpowering them. And then obviously they end up down in the water, and just the picking up the machine gun, that machine gun shot is fucking glorious. All the music stops.
Well, I think it's the best scene of the movie, the most like the previous films. Just their characters kind of come back to what we expect of their characters in those moments.
Yeah.
The lighting, the look of it all with the rain and the set design underneath the dock. Yeah, it's just a really great scene, and I think it's a Cameron situation where like it escalates in certain ways where what one person does has an effect on the outcome of the fight, all the way to where it's underwater, and the like you were saying, like the machine gun shot and everything is so cool. The setup of having Riggs get pulled back down and fall underneath a bunch of cement felt realistic and believable, the way that whole thing played out. The damage done to the dock by the car, the way he grabs onto it in that moment and pulls, like it just, I appreciate those little moments that sell why something happens instead of just because we want it to happen.
And it's also like, you haven't seen Riggs, you haven't seen that look in his eye and that fighting style since part 2. Because in part 3, it's like he's just kind of chasing Jack Traven, and then Jack.
He has a moment of it when Lorna gets shot, but
a moment
he realizes she's okay. But he gets up for furious. But yeah, it's not the same as what you get in this fight.
I was surprised. Donner like just nailed this. Almost felt like a Gareth Evans wasn't really a thing back then, the guy that directed The Raid. But the fighting and just the way, the kinetic energy and the way that like Riggs and Murtaugh are working together for certain points, and then Murtaugh gets his head shoved through a fucking glass window, and then he's out for a second. I just thought it was so well choreographed, and it perfect for how each one of those two guys would be at that stage in their life. And it kind of sealed this as a movie I like more than 3 because of that, and because of the freeway. Both good. I don't dislike any of these movies. Probably the worst action scene in the movie is when they're like chasing down this poor fucking waiter of the restaurant.
Yeah.
And then you get the outdated, even for 1998, Johnny Cochran joke. I don't even think in 1998 was something people were still it's like,
if you get Johnny Cochran, I'll kill you.
Who
That
remembers Johnny?
Like that's a Chris Rock line.
It is.
Yeah. Improv did or something. Yeah, like action scenes like that make the movie feel a bit like a TV movie. And
when we talk about property damage in these movies, this one takes the cake. Why does it take the cake, John?
Murtaugh's house getting burned down and his boat
burned to the ground,
and his boat sinking.
His boat sinks.
Well,
His
and that's
house
part of
is
the point of,
burned.
maybe not part of the point, but they, he's rich now or whatever. They got all this money that they're raking in from her books.
Why they tie these people up and burn the house down instead of just shoot these people, I don't know. Lorna Cole's only redeeming moment in this movie is during that home invasion scene. And it's fine, but it's just like, God, why did she get delegated to like another comic relief kind of character? Oh, I'm hungry, I'm pregnant. It sucks.
It's weird that Gibson didn't really want to do more movies, yet the fourth one is it's such a departure for what his character, I think, the choices he would be making in his life. I guess he didn't really make the choice. It's like because I guess this has like been 6 years to some degree that they've been together. So it's not like they jumped right on immediately trying to have a family, but it's so shoehorned. It's just lame.
Well, there's a nice little
it sidelines her character. They could have done a lot of other things to give Gibson's character enough meat for the movie that didn't have to be this pregnancy storyline that completely sidelines a great character.
They should have just been a couple, and I'm fine with the whole he didn't want to get married because of his because he was a widower or whatever like that, and you can do that at the end, but there's no reason to have her pregnant. None.
Or have her die at the beginning of the film or something. That would be the very dark version, but I would love it.
I think
I'm all for that.
I think there's like a great version of this movie in there somewhere where if it had the style and tone of part two with this like Chinese triad, I think and more of like a Crazy Riggs, it would have worked better. I think the reason it feels so flippy floppy, for lack of a better term, kind of like, it's because you have all this comedy, but then you have this really serious kind of dark, violent ending. This is the only Lethal Weapon movie where Riggs never touches a cigarette. You never see him smoking. Apparently, he kicked the habit between 3 and 4. We know times were changing, so that was one of the reasons.
My fourth one is the fourth one. I'm not a big fan. I don't really like it at all. I like a couple action scenes and one or two character moments, but you got a pretty good trilogy with the first three, and I don't really feel the need to continue on and get much out of that fourth film.
Number 4 for me is number 3. It's not very exciting. I still like it. Preface, I enjoy all these movies. I don't think there's a bad Lethal Weapon movie. I think 3 is just the most underwhelming for me, and I think the ending's kind of boring despite all the fire and the big stunts they put in. I don't like the way they dispatch of the villain.
So yeah, my number 3 is number 3. I don't think this list is ordered all that creatively, but I'm just a bigger fan of 3. It works for me. The humor still works for me. The character interactions, they haven't all become caricatures. I still see the characters I recognize. So it has a lot of issues. It's not one where I feel like I can't sit through it, where I'm like, oh, even the bigger chunks, like the gang stuff, is kind of the least interesting aspect of the movie to me. The only stuff I really feel like not watching is mainly stuff with Leo.
So my third favorite is 4. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I just think there's the strengths in this movie work really good for me, even if you just put them in a vacuum, because I love the ending. I love the intimate fight. I love the freeway scene, and it just feels a little less like condescending than the third one. I don't know. The third one feels like a Lethal Weapon fan film, and you could say that about 4 as well. I just found more enjoyment out of 4.
My number 2. So on this rewatch, it was, for the first time ever, became harder to answer this question because it was always very definitive between 1 and 2, which one I liked more. Rewatching this, part 1 had some character moments that, not that I didn't already love them from before, but I think I'm just choosing to see that as just a really strong element of this series overall, and a real, such a wonderful basis that we got all these movies created off of. It's hard for me not to want to move number 1 into a different position than where I used to see it, but I can't. It's still, number 1's coming in at number 2 for me, in second place. But it elevated itself on this rewatch. It's great. And like I was saying, just such a wonderful basis for an action series of films, and kind of a basis for the buddy cop genre to some degree. And just kind of did it better than anybody who's still trying to do it at this point.
Number 2 for me is also Lethal Weapon 1 from 1987. It's the only one that's a Christmas movie, and that's great. So if people ever say that Shane Black doesn't make movies that don't take place on Christmas, there's a bunch of Lethal Weapon movies to prove that. But I love Lethal Weapon 1. I think it's brilliant. I don't really have a straight up reason for why it's number 2, except for the fact that 2 is just like a perfect sequel. It's one of those sequels that's way up there for me.
We're at the number 1 position, which we both agree is Lethal Weapon 2. It's perfect sequel. It's a great sequel, building on something that was so great to begin with, but it surpassed it. It found ways to still make those characters super compelling in their second outing when they don't have the same issues that they like. Part of what makes 1 so compelling is the issues of those 2 characters and the moment that we see them in their lives. And 2 still finds a way to keep them very compelling. You have to, as you pointed out, you have to wait to get to what we really want to see out of the Riggs character. They pace it in a right way where it's such a wonderful payoff when you get there. And all the character development and the beautiful relationship that has grown with these two characters by the time you get to part 2 is enough to keep us entertained and interested until you get to those later moments of the film.
And Lethal Weapon 2 does that thing where it gives you the happy rigs. I found a new family. I found people that love me and that I love, being Murtaugh and his family. But then you get the He-Man got his sword moment at the end. For him to just lose his shit and become the Riggs from the first movie. And it's paced perfectly and it's done perfectly. Even though it kind of sidelines certain characters for a little bit, it brings back an entire cast of people and builds, like nowadays that, you know, you see that more often with sequels, but like back in the 80s, it's like when you get a part 2, it's like, who's coming back? Just the main characters, and then everything else is different. He had a relationship with Trish, and he does look after the kids. I mean, it's all just implied more than shown, but like, yeah, and then just way upping the stakes. And like I said, another good element of this movie, despite them only being in this movie, is you get the extra team of cops that are present. Even if they don't make much of an impact, it's more interesting to see them working with sort of this other group of cops. And
they make a pretty good impact on the bottom of the pool and the side of the wall.
Maybe the buddy cop genre should come back with original things. It's still doable. I know people's perception on police is different, but maybe not detectives so much as, like, you know, the old black and whites, but I think you can still do it. I still wish there was a fucking Running Scared 2. Man, I love that movie.